This motherfucker don't miss.
No, he's fucking good.
That motherfucker don't miss, man.
He's good.
In the heat of battle, he don't miss.
No.
In the heat of controversy, he don't miss.
No.
You know what really pisses me off? Capcom's recent run of success. And before anyone misunderstands what I mean by that, I'm not mad that Capcom is doing well. In fact, I'm happy that they are. What actually frustrates me is that their success highlights just how avoidable a lot of the failures in the AAA industry really are right now. By 2025, Capcom reported record high sales and profits for 8 consecutive years. That's an incredible streak in any industry, but it's especially impressive in gaming considering what the rest of the AAA space has looked like recently. At the same time Capcom is breaking profit records, a lot of Western studios are dealing with layoffs, studio closures, canceled projects, and investor calls where executives talk about challenging market conditions. And every time I hear that phrase, I can't help but think, challenging compared to what? Because Capcom is operating in the exact same market as everyone else. They're dealing with the same audience, the same economic conditions, the same hardware generation, and the same competition. Yet somehow they keep releasing successful games while other publishers keep shipping massive, expensive failures. So what exactly are they doing differently? What revolutionary strategy has Capcom discovered that everyone else missed? Well, it's actually incredibly complicated. First, they take a large budget and they hire talented developers. Then they put those developers on a team together, and that team focuses on making good games. That's it. That's the strategy. And the frustrating part is that it shouldn't feel revolutionary, because that used to be the basic expectation across the entire industry. But if you look at a lot of modern AAA development, something has clearly gone wrong. Over the past few years, we've seen some extremely high-profile disasters from major publishers. The Saints Row reboot, Redfall, Suicide Squad killed the Justice League, Skull and Bones. And of course, do I even need to mention its name? These aren't small mistakes from inexperienced teams. These are massive games with massive development budgets, huge marketing campaigns, and years of production behind them. They were approved at every level of corporate leadership, and they still launched to massive backlash or commercial failure. When you start comparing those games, you begin to notice a common thread. Most of them were chasing trends. Live service mechanics, engagement metrics, battle passes, roadmaps, retention systems. Instead of focusing on making a fun experience first, a lot of these games feel like they were designed around keeping players logged in for as long as possible. And that approach fundamentally misunderstands why people play games in the first place. Players don't boot up a game because they want to participate in a monetization ecosystem. They boot up a game because they want to enjoy themselves. Capcom seems to understand that better than a lot of publishers right now. Another area where Capcom stands out is something that sounds incredibly basic: launching games that actually feel complete. Over the last decade, the industry has become very comfortable with releasing unfinished games and promising that the missing pieces will be added later. This is where the concept of a roadmap comes in. If you've played modern AAA games, you've probably seen these before. It's the chart developers release after launch that outlines all the features that will eventually be added to the game you just bought. Season 1 content, Season 2 content, new gameplay systems, major mechanics that somehow weren't ready at launch. The underlying message players often hear is basically, don't worry, the game will be good eventually. But that's a tough sell when players are already paying full price. Imagine buying a car and then the dealership tells you the steering wheel will arrive in a future update. That's essentially how some modern game launches feel. Capcom has mostly avoided this issue by making sure their games ship with complete campaigns and fully realized mechanics from the start. Updates usually come in the form of expansions or additional content rather than missing features that should have been there on day one. Over time, that approach builds something incredibly valuable in this game industry, and that's trust. And trust is something many publishers have spent the last decade losing. Another uncomfortable truth that the AAA industry doesn't like to talk about is how out of control development budgets have become.
Spider-Man 2, budget $300 million, copies sold at $70 or more, 11 million, revenue $770 million, profits $470 million, unsustainable. I actually responded to it. Revenue does not equal net income. Budget does not equal total expenses. If you're trying to find out how much money the game made, it'd be total revenue minus total expenses, and that would be net income. We're not even talking about distribution. We're not talking about if they sold any physical copies. The $300 million doesn't even count the marketing budget. So with their marketing budget, it's probably more like $450 million. Let's be real. You're also not accounting for the cut that Marvel takes. I don't know, maybe like 650 million with everything else. So chances are the game made like $100 to $120 million million in net. 120 million means they only have 120 million to invest in their next project after this one. I'm sure it sounded smart when you wrote it down the first time.
Modern AAA games can cost anywhere from $200 to $400 million to develop and market. That's blockbuster movie territory. Once a project reaches that scale, something dangerous starts happening internally. The game becomes too big to fail. When hundreds of millions of dollars are on the line, executives begin making extremely safe decisions in an attempt to protect their investment. Gameplay gets built around engagement metrics. Design decisions start coming from marketing teams and financial analysts instead of creative leads. Features get added because they support monetization systems, not because they improve the experience. But creativity doesn't work well under that kind of pressure. Some of the most successful games of the past decade weren't massive all-or-nothing bets. They were focused projects with clear creative direction. Capcom seems to understand that balance. Not every game they release needs to be the biggest project ever made. It just needs to be well-designed and enjoyable to play. The funny thing about Capcom's current success is that they weren't always operating this way. About a decade ago, they fell into many of the same traps other publishers are dealing with now. Resident Evil 6 is a great example. The game tried to push the series further into action territory in an attempt to capture a broader audience. The tone shifted away from survival horror and closer toward the style of big blockbuster shooters that were dominating the market at the time. The game actually sold very well in terms of raw numbers, eventually reaching around 15 million lifetime sales. But despite those numbers, a lot of longtime fans felt like something important had been lost. It didn't feel like Resident Evil anymore. And this is where Capcom did something extremely important. They listened. Instead of doubling down on the action direction, they course-corrected. Resident Evil 7 returned the series to a slower, more focused survival horror experience. It leaned into atmosphere, tension, and exploration instead of trying to compete directly with mainstream shooters. That decision ended up restarting the entire franchise. Resident Evil 7 was successful. Resident Evil 2 Remake was a massive hit. Then Resident Evil Village, then Resident Evil 4 Remake. At the same time, Monster Hunter exploded globally with Monster Hunter World. The momentum kept building. Capcom didn't chase trends anymore. They doubled down on what made their games unique. Another major factor in Capcom's consistency is their technology. The RE engine might quietly be one of the most important internal tools in modern AAA development. It allows Capcom to build multiple franchises on the same technical foundation. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Street Fighter, Devil May Cry, even new projects like Pragmata are all built on the same engine. This means teams aren't rebuilding core systems from scratch every time a new project begins. They're iterating on an existing pipeline, improving tools, refining performance, sharing technology between teams. That kind of infrastructure dramatically speeds up development and reduces risk. Meanwhile, many Western studios are constantly switching engines, building proprietary technology mid-development, or struggling with tools that were never fully finished. Capcom's approach allows them to release major titles consistently without massive gaps between games. Another smart decision Capcom has made is maintaining a diverse portfolio of franchises. They're not relying on a single massive project to carry the entire company. Instead, they rotate between several successful series. Resident Evil, Monster Hunter, Street Fighter, Devil May Cry, and now we're seeing dormant franchises like Onimusha return alongside brand new IP like Pragmata. This spreads risk across multiple projects instead of concentrating everything into one massive gamble. Compare that to publishers who pour hundreds of millions into a single live service game hoping it becomes the next Fortnite. When that gamble fails, the consequences can be devastating. Layoffs, studio closures, canceled projects, entire teams disappearing overnight. Capcom's strategy is simply more stable. Another trend Capcom has quietly proven wrong is the idea that the single-player game is dying. For years, parts of the industry insisted that the future of gaming was entirely multiplayer and live service. But the last several years have completely destroyed that narrative. Players clearly still love single-player experiences. They just want them to be good. Strong gameplay, memorable environments, stories that actually go somewhere. Games that can be finished in a reasonable amount of time without demanding hundreds of hours of commitment. Capcom leaned into that with Resident Evil, and the results speak for themselves. Millions of copies sold, strong word of mouth, long-term brand loyalty. But another major issue facing modern AAA development is the constant trend chasing. Whenever a new genre becomes popular, the industry immediately floods the market with copycat projects. Battle Royale explodes, suddenly everyone wants a Battle Royale. Live service games generate huge revenue, now every publisher wants a live service game. Open world games dominate sales charts. Now every franchise becomes a massive open world filled with hundreds of checklists. Over time, that approach erodes genre diversity. Games start feeling interchangeable. Capcom has largely resisted that temptation. Their upcoming lineup includes survival horror, action, fighting games, and brand new experimental projects. 3 different genres, 3 different audiences, that's healthy variety. Another factor in Capcom's success is that they actually pay attention when fans push back. Modern players are extremely informed. They watch analysis videos, they follow development news, they see when a game is trying to copy another successful title instead of building its own identity. And if players think something is off, that feedback spreads quickly. YouTube reviews, Steam reviews, Reddit discussions, within hours of launch, the internet can dissect every flaw in a game. Capcom has shown a willingness to listen to that feedback and adjust direction when necessary. That ability to course correct is something a lot of publishers struggle with. If other AAA publishers want to recover, the solution isn't actually that complicated. Stop chasing trends. Let franchises maintain their identity instead of forcing them into whatever genre happens to be popular at the moment. Invest in better tools and internal infrastructure to shorten development cycles. Balance massive projects with mid-budget games that allow for experimentation. And most importantly, respect the player's time. Not every game needs to be a 200-hour open world. Sometimes a focused 12 to 20-hour experience is exactly what people need. I'm not rooting for the collapse of the AAA industry. When AAA development is working properly, it produces some of the greatest gaming experiences ever made. And honestly, there are signs that some publishers are beginning to course correct. But right now, Capcom stands as one of the clearest examples of how to operate successfully in the modern gaming market. They have clear creative direction, efficient production pipelines, a diverse portfolio of games, and a willingness to listen to their audience. It's not magic, it's not luck, it's just competence. And until more publishers rediscover that approach, Capcom is probably going to keep embarrassing them financially. The good news is that if this trend continues, we're at least guaranteed several solid Capcom games in the next few years. And in the current gaming landscape, that alone says a lot. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one. Get out of here.